The big circular alien artifact is the biggest mystery in Starfield. Some people think that it's a wormhole that'll teleport the player to another place in the galaxy, like Stargate. Some people think that the rings represent an actual being, since angels in the Bible are supposed to be really crazy looking. There are even some people who think that the rings represent only the first half of the game, where the player will be teleported to a completely different alien part of the game world. But in a game where traveling through space is the norm and the myriad of sci-fi experiences players have had through books, movies, and games, isn't finding an ancient relic that teleports the player to the origin of humanity a little overdone? 2001 Odyssey, Mission to Mars, and more recently Moonfall highlight this idea. Besides that, if our ships can travel relatively quickly through space from place to place, an ancient alien teleporter seems a little redundant and kind of a letdown, doesn't it? Okay, so if our big shiny alien goodie isn't a teleporter, what could it be?
I don't know.
Reddit has a pretty interesting idea. What if this swirling artifact is an ancient alien Dyson sphere? Let me explain. A Dyson sphere is a hypothetical device that is large enough to surround a star and harness its solar energy, basically surrounding it with solar panels and sending the energy to Earth to use as an infinite energy supply. In the Starfield world, the colony wars have ended and the colonies are at a tentative peace with each other, fighting over the usual necessities like medicine or salvageable tech. But what if one resource that all of the colonies are finding scarce is a renewable source of energy to fuel their civilization? What if they're running out of a resource that makes it possible for them to travel long distances, or some disaster is coming and they need a huge energy resource to avert that disaster? And power and energy have always been one of the most important resources in the real world. Finding an infinite power source has always been one of humankind's greatest goals. And within the confines of Starfield, wouldn't finding and securing an unlimited source of power be extremely valuable to any of the colonies that have just finished fighting a war that sounds a lot like the plot from Firefly? Gameplay-wise, it could simply be the same as reaching nuclear power generators in Fallout 4 in your settlements. We build bases and generate wind power or maybe solar power after discovering recipes, but only after we reach this point in the game do we get access to alien power generators that fully power our structures and ships. The second most interesting possibility is that after we solve the relic mystery, it opens up a second world flush with intelligent alien life. A halfway point like this doesn't happen very often in video games, where you feel like you've completed the game only to realize that you're only halfway through it. And speaking of halfway through, if you've made it this far, why don't you take a second and hit that like button and sub to the channel? It'll help YouTube shove this video in the faces of more people who might be interested in Starfield content, helping our community grow together. Thanks. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time gave me this feeling twice. Once when you finally pull the Master Sword from the temple, traveling forward in time, only to go through the areas you've been through already, though several years in the future. And the second, making it through the Water Temple. Considering that Starfield is boasting like 3 times the dialogue compared to their other games, this isn't outside the realm of possibility. I do think that it's more unlikely since their map is already full of planets, including the known playable areas. Creating a completely separate map on the other side of the portal that the player would have to jump between to accomplish different tasks between the two worlds seems really cumbersome and unnecessary. With the same idea in mind, it's also possible that this is a portal, but it's not something that the player will actually go through. Instead, maybe it's a doorway, and when we complete it, we unwittingly introduce a threat to humanity and to the world, much like what happened in the Avengers movie when the Tesseract was used to open a portal. It would be hilarious if finding the artifacts was only the first act of the story, and the remaining story would be dedicated to eliminating the threat that you brought upon humanity. Now that I think about it, that's pretty similar to what Oblivion was. It was about preventing portals from being opened and releasing hellish nightmares upon the world. I doubt they would do that again. And then finally, there's the speculation about what Todd Howard said about how the game's story wants to explore the ideas of how humanity came to be and the bigger meaning of life type of questions. Honestly, I'm pretty dumb, and I'm not interested in the big questions that Bethesda wants to talk about in their story. So if there's deeper meaning to the artifact, what it represents, and how it affects the inhabitants of Starfield, I'll probably be paying more attention to whether my bases are farming the materials I need to upgrade my current favorite weapon, or if the quest chain I'm currently on will give me access to the companion I want to use. I don't think I'm alone in that. I'm a small brain coconut, and I just like good, fun games. Once the story gets too deep without being interesting, I just spam the next button to get to the next mission so I can either shoot things or build stuff. Whatever the ancient alien artifacts end up being, I hope it has a fun impact on the game and how the player plays the game from that point onward. I hope it becomes something we can build around with our ships and bases, or that it does actually lead the player into a different dungeon-esque area where we can get an epic piece of gear. Maybe like Starfield, we can dial in different addresses and get access to random spaces, and it becomes like a dungeon hub where you dial in an address and you get taken to a dungeon that you blast through to get to the goodies at the end. Or it could just be a teleporter. The most unimaginative outcome that the entire player base sees coming a mile away. Fast travel with extra steps. As long as that's not it, I personally will be happy. What do you think about the rings in Starfield, and what function do you think they will serve in the game? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, let me know what you'd like me to talk about next. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike it if you disliked it, and until next time, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.